The Deep Space Monitoring Station on Luna Base hadn't detected anything unusual in 40 years of operation. That changed on a quiet Tuesday morning when the sensors lit up like a Christmas tree. "Sir, you need to see this," said Mike, the young operator who had drawn the morning shift. His supervisor walked over, coffee cup in hand, and nearly dropped it when he saw the readings. Across the vast darkness of space, something was coming. The energy signature was unlike anything in their database, and it was moving fast, too fast for a natural phenomenon. Within an hour, the United Earth Space Command's primary fleet was on high alert. Captain James Walker stood on the bridge of the UES Sentinel, Earth's most advanced exploration vessel, watching the main screen with steady eyes. At 45 years old, he had spent more than half his life in space, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for this moment. "Report," he commanded, his voice calm despite the tension filling the bridge. "The object is decelerating, Captain," replied his sensor officer. It's changing course." "Sir, I think it's trying to match our orbit." The unknown vessel emerged from the darkness like a wounded animal. Its hull gleamed with an otherworldly iridescence, but deep gashes marred its surface. Streams of crystalline particles trailed behind it like blood and water. "Life signs?" Walker asked, leaning forward in his chair. "Yes, sir, but they're unlike anything we've ever seen. The patterns suggest crystalline structures. That can't be right." Walker made his decision. "Open a channel, all frequencies. Let's see if anyone's home." The response came not in words, but in pulses of light that danced across their sensors. The ship's AI worked frantically to decode the pattern, and when it did, the message was simple but clear. "Help us. Medical teams to Emergency Transport Bay 3, Walker ordered. "Engineering, prepare for possible rescue operations. And someone get me a direct line to Earth Command. Tell them first contact just happened, and they're in trouble." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The alien vessel's systems were failing rapidly, and the Sentinel's crew worked against time to establish a safe docking procedure. When the airlocks finally sealed together, Walker led the first contact team himself. They found them in the ship's central chamber, beings of living crystal, their forms pulsing with internal light. Most were damaged, their crystalline bodies cracked and dulled, but they were alive, and they were conscious. One of them stepped forward, its form more intricate than the others. Light patterns rippled across its surface in what Walker would later learn was their equivalent of speech. The ship's AI translated, "We are the Luminary. We come seeking sanctuary. Our home is being devoured." The alien, who would later be known as Crystal Singer, projected a hologram from its body. The image showed a star system being torn apart by something that defied the laws of physics. Walker watched in horror as entire planets were pulled into what looked like a hole in the fabric of reality itself. "How many survivors?" he asked, dreading the answer. "On this ship, 312, Crystal Singer responded. "But in our home system," the alien's light dimmed noticeably. "Billions remain. We are all that escaped the first wave. Our fastest ship, carrying our best and brightest, sent to find help. The others, they were lost in the attempt." Walker straightened his back, a decision crystallizing in his mind. He touched his comm badge. "Walker to Earth Command. Request emergency protocol activation. Priority 1. We're going to need every ship we've got." He looked at the wounded alien beings before him, their crystalline forms flickering like candles in a wind that threatened to extinguish them. In that moment, he knew humanity faced a choice. Turn away and let an entire civilization die, or risk everything to save them. The response from Earth Command came quickly. "Protocol authorized, Captain Walker. The fleet is yours. Save them." And so began the largest rescue operation in human history, all because of a chance encounter and a decision that would change two civilizations forever. Crystal Singer's lights pulsed weakly. "Why would you help us? We are strangers to your kind." Walker's answer was simple. Because that's what humans do. We help when we can, where we can. And right now, you need help. The alien's light brightened slightly, a glimmer of hope in the darkness of space, and somewhere in the distance, the United Earth Fleet was already beginning to mobilize. The United Earth Council chamber had never been so quiet. 50 world leaders sat in stunned silence as Crystal Singer's holographic form floated above the central podium. The crystalline being's light patterns pulsed softly as it shared its story, each pulse translating into words that chilled the room. Our star system lies 17 light-years from Earth. The alien's translated voice echoed through the chamber. 3 weeks ago, our scientists detected an anomaly forming near our sun. At first, we thought it was a simple solar flare. The hologram changed, showing a beautiful star system with 7 planets. Captain Walker stood to the side, watching the human leaders' faces as they saw the luminary homeworld for the first time. Crystal worlds orbited their sun like giant diamonds, each one home to billions of crystalline beings. Then it began to grow, Crystal Singer continued. The hologram showed a dark tear in space, spreading like a cancer across their system. The anomaly doesn't just destroy, it consumes. Matter, energy, even light itself disappears into its depths. Our best scientists believe it's a tear in space-time, growing larger with everything it devours. One of the council members, an elderly man from India, raised his hand. How much time do your people have? Crystal Singer's light dimmed noticeably. At current rates of expansion, less than 2 Earth weeks before our outer colonies are consumed, a month before it reaches our homeworld. Murmurs filled the chamber. Admiral Kate Stone, who had been quietly observing from the back, stepped forward. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her uniform bore the marks of someone who had seen more than her share of battles. "Tell them about your evacuation attempts," she said, her voice firm but kind. Crystal Singer's form flickered, a sign of emotional distress in their species. "We tried. We sent our fastest ships, our largest transports. The anomaly. It creates distortions in space. Of the 50 ships we sent, only ours made it through. The others were pulled apart or vanished entirely." The hologram showed scenes of massive crystal ships, each larger than a small city, trying to escape the growing darkness. One by one, they were torn apart or twisted into impossible shapes before disappearing. 8 billion of our people remained trapped, Crystal Singer said. Children, elders, entire families. We have the technology to evacuate them. But our ships cannot withstand the spatial distortions. That's why we came to Earth. Your species. You're different. Your ships use technology we never considered. Admiral Stone nodded. Our hull designs and shield configurations operate on completely different principles. We might have a chance where their ships failed. The council president leaned forward. Admiral Stone, what exactly are you suggesting? A rescue mission, she replied, her voice steady. The largest in human history. Every available ship, every transport we can spare. Modified with reinforced shields and enhanced structural integrity fields. The risk to our fleet would be enormous, another council member protested. We'd be sending our ships into what amounts to a growing black hole. Captain Walker stepped forward. With all due respect, council members, risk is what humanity does best. We crossed oceans when we only had wooden boats. We flew through the air when we barely understood gravity. We reached for the stars when space was trying to kill us. Now there's an entire civilization asking for our help. Crystal Singer's light brightened slightly. We understand if you choose not to help. We would not ask another species to risk themselves for. No, Walker interrupted. That's not how we do things. Not how humans do things. Admiral Stone pulled up a tactical display. I've already drawn up preliminary plans. We can have the fleet ready in 48 hours. Probably lose some ships, yes. But we might save billions of lives. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Arguments flew back and forth about risks, resources, and responsibilities. But in the end, it came down to a simple question. Could humanity live with itself if it turned away? The vote was unanimous. Crystal Singer, the council president, announced, standing tall, "Humanity accepts your request for aid. May whatever gods exist help us all." And so, as the clock ticked down on an alien civilization, the greatest fleet in human history began to assemble. The rescue mission that would test the limits of both human technology and human courage was about to begin. Earth's orbital shipyards had never seen such activity. Hundreds of ships hung in space like steel giants, their hulls being modified around the clock. Engineers worked in zero gravity, installing new shield generators and reinforcing hull plating. The entire planet had mobilized for war, except this time, they were fighting against time itself. In the main control room of Orbital Station 1, Engineer Tom Reed stared at his computer screen, his coffee long forgotten. Dark circles under his eyes showed he hadn't slept in days, but his mind was sharp as ever. "The shield modifications are holding in simulations," he reported to Admiral Stone, who stood behind him watching the test results. "We've adapted the luminary crystal technology to strengthen our defensive systems. It should give us an extra layer of protection against the spatial distortions." Admiral Stone nodded, her face reflecting in the dark screen. "How many ships can we modify in time?" 512, Tom replied, pulling up the fleet roster. "That's every military vessel, research ship, and civilian transport large enough to make the journey. We're stripping down luxury liners and retrofitting cargo ships. If it can fly and carry passengers, we're taking it." On the other side of the room, Captain Walker was reviewing crew assignments. Thousands of volunteers had stepped forward, more than they had ships for. Every pilot, engineer, and medic on Earth wanted to be part of the mission. "We're breaking every safety regulation in the book," Walker said, looking up from his tablet. "Running ships with minimal crews, doubling up on shifts, pushing engines beyond their rated limits. In normal times, this would get us all court-martialed." "These aren't normal times," Admiral Stone replied. She walked to the central holographic display, where a simulation showed the luminary home system. The dark anomaly grew larger with each update from their long-range sensors. "We have 10 days before the outer colonies are consumed. Everything we've learned about space travel tells us this mission is impossible." "Good thing humans don't listen very well when something's impossible," Tom said, not looking up from his work. His fingers flew over the keyboard as he made final adjustments to the shield harmonics. Crystal Singer floated into the room, its light patterns subdued. The alien had been helping coordinate between human engineers and the few luminary scientists who had survived the journey to Earth. "Your people continue to amaze us," it said through the translator. "You work with such passion, such drive." "That's because we're too stubborn to give up," Walker replied with a small smile, "and too dumb to know when we're beaten." A young lieutenant burst into the room, nearly forgetting to salute in his excitement. "Admiral, the first wave of ships is ready. Shield modifications are complete, and crews are boarding." Admiral Stone straightened her uniform. "Sound the alert. All personnel to their assigned vessels. We launch in 2 hours." Across Earth's orbital space, klaxons began to sound. Crews rushed to their ships, carrying whatever supplies they could manage. The fleet that assembled was unlike anything in human history. Sleek military vessels flew alongside converted cargo ships and passenger liners, all united in a single purpose. In the control room, Admiral Stone looked at her small team. "I won't lie to you. This mission, we're going to lose ships. We're going to lose good people. But what we're about to attempt, saving an entire civilization, this is why humanity reached for the stars in the first place." Tom finally stood from his computer, stretching his tired muscles. "The shield modifications are uploaded to all ships. It's not perfect, but it's the best we can do with the time we have." "It will have to be enough," Walker said, checking his own tablet one last time. "The Luminary are counting on us. We either succeed or 8 billion people die." Crystal Singer's lights pulsed with what they had learned was hope. You risk everything for strangers. We will never forget this. Save your thanks for when we succeed, Admiral Stone said, heading for the door. All hands to ships. The greatest rescue mission in human history begins now. The stars watched silently as humanity prepared to attempt the impossible. 500 ships, tens of thousands of crew members, all willing to risk everything to save a species they had only just met, because that's what humans do. They help. They fight. They refuse to let the darkness win. 500 ships jumped into hyperspace at exactly the same moment. The sight was breathtaking. A flash of light that briefly outshone the sun itself. On Earth, millions watched through telescopes and screens as humanity's fleet vanished into the unknown. Captain Walker stood on the bridge of the UES Sentinel, which now led the massive fleet. The ship's engines hummed with power as they pushed through hyperspace at speeds that would have seemed impossible just a few years ago. "Status report," he called out, watching the swirling colors of hyperspace through the main viewport. "All ships maintaining formation," his first officer replied. "The modified shields are holding steady. Engineer Reed's calculations were perfect. We're actually making better time than expected." In the engine room, Tom Reed monitored the new shield systems with nervous attention. The luminary crystals pulsed with energy, their light mixing with the blue glow of the ship's power core. Crystal Singer stood nearby, its own light patterns showing what humans had learned to recognize as amazement. "Your technology," the alien said through the translator. "It's so different from ours. Crude in some ways, yet incredibly adaptable. You built these modifications in days. It would have taken our engineers years to attempt something similar." Tom wiped sweat from his forehead. "Sometimes being crude has its advantages. We humans have a saying. If it looks stupid but works, it isn't stupid." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. The fleet had encountered its first spatial distortion, a massive wave of twisted space-time rolling through hyperspace itself. All ships braced for impact. Admiral Stone's voice rang through the comm system. She was commanding the operation from the flagship UES Thunder. "Maintain formation and divert power to forward shields." The wave hit like a hammer. Ships rocked violently, their crews holding on as reality itself seemed to bend around them. But the modified shields held. Tom's crazy combination of human and luminary technology was working. "Damage report," Walker demanded, picking himself up from where he'd been thrown against his chair. "Minor damage to outer hull plating," came the response. "But the shields absorbed most of it." "Wait. Sir, we're getting distress calls from the civilian ships in the rear of the fleet." 3 transport ships had fallen behind, their engines struggling against the spatial distortion. Walker made his decision instantly. "Sentinel to Thunder," he called to Admiral Stone. "Request permission to fall back and assist." "Granted," Stone's voice crackled through the comm. "But make it quick, Captain. Our sensors show more distortions ahead." The Sentinel turned around, its engines blazing as it pushed back through the disrupted space. They'd reached the struggling transports just as another wave approached. "Extension shields," Walker ordered. "Project our shield bubble around those ships." The Sentinel's shields expanded, creating a protective bubble that encompassed the damaged transports. Together, they pushed through the distortion, the combined power of their engines finally breaking free. "This is just the beginning," Crystal Singer said quietly, watching the sensor readings. "The distortions will get worse as we get closer to the anomaly. Many of your ships may not survive." Tom looked up from his engineering station, his face determined. "Maybe not. But we'll get enough through. We have to." Hour after hour, the fleet pressed on. They encountered more spatial distortions, each worse than the last. Ships were damaged, repairs were made on the fly, and crews worked until they could barely stand. But they kept going. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the fleet approached its destination. The sensors showed the luminary home system ahead, and the massive anomaly that threatened to destroy it. All ships, prepare to exit hyperspace. Admiral Stone's voice was steady despite the tension. What we're about to see. Stay focused on the mission. We're here to save lives. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. And there, before them, was a sight that made even the bravest crew members catch their breath. A star system being eaten alive by darkness. The real battle was about to begin. The Luminary home system was a battlefield, but the enemy wasn't something they could fight. The massive dark anomaly stretched across space like a tear in reality itself, its edges crackling with energy that twisted light into impossible shapes. The closest crystal planet was already half consumed, its surface cracking as the anomaly pulled it apart piece by piece. "Dear God," Captain Walker whispered, standing on the Sentinel's bridge. The view screen showed scenes of chaos. Millions of Luminary desperately trying to reach evacuation points, their crystalline cities glowing with emergency lights. Admiral Stone's voice came through the fleet-wide channel. All ships begin emergency deployment. Military vessels form a defensive line between the anomaly and the civilian transports. Begin teleporter operations immediately. The human fleet moved with practiced precision. 500 ships spread out across the system, their modified shields glowing as they pushed against the spatial distortions. The massive transport ships moved toward the crystal planets, their teleporter systems already powering up. In the Sentinel's engine room, Tom Reed worked frantically at his console. "The anomaly's affecting our teleporter signals. We need to boost power to the pattern buffers, or we'll lose people during transport." Crystal Singer's light patterns flashed with urgency. "Our people are gathering at the designated coordinates, but the ground is becoming unstable. The planet's core is being affected by the anomaly's pull." The first attempts at teleportation were nerve-wracking. Streams of energy connected the ships to the surface, pulling groups of Luminary aboard in flashes of light. Each successful transport was met with cheers from the human crews. But the anomaly wasn't making it easy. 3 smaller ships were caught in a sudden gravity wave, their shields flaring as they fought against the pull. Captain Walker watched in horror as one of them began to break apart. "Sentinel to injured vessels," he called out. "Lock onto our signal. We'll tow you out." The Sentinel moved closer to the struggling ships, extending tractor beams to pull them to safety. The ship groaned under the strain, its hull plates creaking as the anomaly's forces tried to tear it apart. "Hull integrity at 60%. Someone shouted. "We're losing structural cohesion." Walker gripped his chair. "Reroute power from weapons to structural integrity fields. We are not losing those ships." Through sheer determination and skillful piloting, they managed to pull the damaged vessels to safety. But the cost was heavy. The Sentinel's engines were strained almost to breaking point. Admiral Stone's voice crackled through the comm again. "Status report. How many have we evacuated?" The numbers came in from across the fleet. 2 million Luminary in the first hour. Another 3 million in the second. But it wasn't enough. The anomaly was growing faster than they could evacuate. "We need more time," Walker said, studying the tactical display. Then he saw it, a possible solution. "Admiral, if we position the fleet in a spiral pattern and synchronize our shield frequencies, we might be able to create a barrier, push back against the anomaly's expansion, just enough to buy us more time." It was a crazy plan, the kind only humans would think of. Using shields designed to protect individual ships to create a wall against a force that ate reality itself. "Do it," Stone ordered. "All ships, move into spiral formation. Coordinate with the Sentinel for shield frequencies." The human fleet moved into position, their shields linking together to form a massive energy barrier. The strain on the ships was enormous. Warning lights flashed on every bridge as engines were pushed far beyond their limits. But it worked. The anomaly's expansion slowed, just enough to give the transport ships the time they needed to continue the evacuation. "We're losing power to the shields," Tom reported from engineering. "The crystals are starting to crack under the strain." Captain Walker looked at the readings, then at the millions of luminaries still waiting to be rescued. Then we'll hold it together, with spit and prayers if we have to. Keep those teleporters running. We're not leaving anyone behind. The battle against time and physics continued, with humanity's determination tested against the very forces of nature itself. Their ships might break, their shields might fail, but their will to save lives remained unshakable. Time was running out. The human fleet's shield barrier was beginning to fail, and the dark anomaly pushed against it like a hungry beast. On the bridge of the UES Thunder, Admiral Stone watched as another crystal city disappeared into the darkness. "Status report," she demanded, her voice hoarse from hours of giving orders. "We've evacuated 60% of the population," her officer replied. "But we've lost 37 ships. The rest are running on emergency power." Hull breaches reported on decks 4 through 7. The ship shuddered as another wave of distorted spacetime crashed against their shields. In engineering, Tom Reed worked with bloodshot eyes, trying to keep the failing systems online. Crystal Singer helped him, their combined knowledge of human and luminary technology, the only thing keeping the ships functioning. "The shield crystals are shattering," Tom reported through the comm. "We can't hold this position much longer." Captain Walker's voice cut through the chaos. "Admiral, the Sentinel sensors have detected something. The anomaly's pull is weakest at its outer edges. If we concentrate our remaining ships there, we might create a safe corridor for evacuation." Stone finished. "But we'd have to drop our current barrier. The inner planets would be consumed almost immediately." Crystal Singer's lights pulsed rapidly. "The inner planets are already lost. Most have been evacuated, but the outer colony on the 7th planet, there are still millions there." Admiral Stone made her decision. "All ships, new coordinates being transmitted. Form up on the Sentinel's position. We're making our last stand at the edge of the anomaly." The human fleet moved like a well-oiled machine, despite their damaged state. Ships with failing engines were towed by their companions. No one was left behind, a human tradition that extended even to their vessels. At the new position, they created a narrow corridor of overlapping shields. The transport ships moved through this protective tunnel, pushing against the anomaly's pull to reach the outer colony. "Multiple hull breaches," came the cry from several ships. "Emergency force fields failing. Hold position." Stone ordered. "Reroute life support power if you have to. Just give those transports enough time." In the Sentinel's engine room, Tom made a disturbing discovery. The power core is going critical. These crystal modifications, they're pulling more power than the engines can generate. "How long?" Walker asked over the comm. 20 minutes, maybe less. After that, the cores will breach. Crystal Singer's lights dimmed. "Your ships will be destroyed." "Then we have 20 minutes to save as many as we can," Walker replied. "Admiral Stone, request permission to move the Sentinel closer. We'll extend our shields to buy the transports more time." "Permission granted," Stone said. "All ships with remaining power do the same. Let's show this anomaly what humanity's made of." The damaged fleet pushed forward one last time. Ships with failing engines used their last power to extend their shields. Crews worked in vacuum conditions as hull breaches widened, held back only by emergency force fields. The evacuation continued at a frantic pace. Teleporters worked nonstop, pulling thousands of luminary to safety with each passing minute. The transport ships, packed well beyond their rated capacity, jumped to safety as soon as they were full. "Core breach imminent." Tom's voice was urgent. "We need to go." But they could see more luminary still waiting on the surface below. Families, children, the last survivors of a dying world. 30 seconds to core breach. Admiral Stone's voice was calm. "All ships with full evacuation loads jump to safety. The rest of us, we hold. We hold until the last possible second." The remaining ships pushed their systems beyond any safe limit. Hulls buckled, engines burned out, but they held their position. In those final moments, thousands more luminary were teleported to safety. 10 seconds. Now, Stone ordered. Emergency jump. Get us out of here. The remaining human ships activated their jump drives just as their cores began to breach. They vanished in a flash of light, leaving behind a dying star system and a growing darkness. But they had done it. Against all odds, against the very laws of physics, humanity had saved millions of lives in the greatest rescue mission ever attempted. 1 month after the Great Evacuation, Earth's orbital space sparkled not just with human stations, but with crystalline structures that caught and reflected sunlight in rainbow patterns. The surviving luminary had begun building their new homes, creating beautiful crystal cities that floated among Earth's satellites. In the main hospital wing of Orbital Station 1, Captain Walker stood by Tom Reed's bed. The engineer was finally awake after spending 3 weeks recovering from radiation exposure and severe exhaustion. "How many?" Tom asked, his voice weak but eager. "How many did we save?" Walker smiled, pulling up a chair beside the bed. 6.2 billion, more than 75% of their entire population. The greatest rescue in human history. And the fleet? The captain's smile faded slightly. "We lost 89 ships total. But the crews?" He paused, pride evident in his voice. "The crews mostly made it. Even the ships we lost managed to evacuate their people before the end. Humans are stubborn that way." Through the hospital window, they could see Admiral Stone's new command center, a joint human luminary facility where both species worked together to coordinate the massive relocation effort. The Admiral had refused any time off, working tirelessly to help the refugees settle into their new home. Crystal Singer floated into the room, its light patterns brighter and more complex than ever before. "The Council of Light has reached a decision," it announced. "We wish to share our technology with humanity. All of it." Walker sat up straighter. "All of it. But your crystal tech, your energy systems, are now yours," Crystal Singer completed. "Your people sacrificed everything to save ours. You risked your ships, your lives, without asking for anything in return. This is how we choose to repay that debt." Tom tried to sit up but was gently pushed back by a nurse. "The applications would be endless," he said, his engineer's mind already racing. "Your crystal computing combined with our adaptability. We'll take both our species to the stars," Crystal Singer agreed. "Together." Outside the window, a new ship was taking shape in the orbital shipyard. It was unlike anything ever built before, a perfect fusion of human and luminary technology. Its hull was standard human alloy, but crystal arrays grew across its surface like elegant vines, strengthening and enhancing every system. Admiral Stone had named it Unity. In the weeks that followed, more changes came. Luminary crystal gardens appeared in cities across Earth, their beautiful structures serving both as homes for the refugees and power sources for human communities. Schools were established where both species could learn from each other, combining the luminary's ancient wisdom with humanity's innovative spirit. But perhaps the most profound change was in how both species saw themselves. The luminary learned about human determination, about refusing to give up even when facing impossible odds, and humans learned that their greatest strength wasn't in their technology or their numbers, but in their unwavering will to help others. One evening, as the sun set over the new crystal cities in orbit, Captain Walker found Admiral Stone at her usual spot in the command center. "The Unity's first test flight is tomorrow," he said, joining her at the window. Stone nodded. "Joint human luminary crew." Tom insisted on being there, even though he's barely out of the hospital. Of course he did. He's human. They watched as lights began to twinkle in the crystal structures, creating patterns that rivaled the stars themselves. "You know," Stone said thoughtfully, "when we first detected the damaged luminary ship, we had no idea it would lead to all this." "That's the thing about helping others," Walker replied. "You never know where it might lead. You just know it's the right thing to do." Crystal Singer joined them, its light mixing with the glow from Earth below. Your people have a saying, "A friend in need is a friend indeed." Yes, Stone smiled. And now we're more than friends. We're family. As night fell over Earth, the combined lights of human cities and luminary crystals created a new kind of beauty, a testament to what could be achieved when two species came together, bound by courage, sacrifice, and an unwavering determination to help those in need. The day human spaceships saved an alien race became the day both species found something greater than survival. They found hope for a future that was brighter than either could have imagined alone.